I got to say, for as much criticism as I've taken on a recent video that I posted about the circus going to Oregon this week, because people took that and they, of course, got all offended by it, but they didn't listen to the video probably. A circus is a show. I could have called it a carnival or a show. I called it a circus. Okay, so I'm not going to apologize for that. Watch the video. There's a ton of respect given to Deion Sanders and his coaching performance this year and the performance of his team, because what this team has shown me this year and shown all of us is that they walked into TCU as a 3-touchdown underdog. They pulled that off. They were then able to kind of do what the better teams do and celebrate for 24 hours, go on to the next mission, put that behind them, take on a more physical Nebraska team that was better in the trenches, that really rolled out a good defense for about 2.5 quarters that just got worn out, and they took them to task as a kind of a pick'em game. They were a slight favorite in that game. And then this Colorado State game, I don't expect that Colorado State's a very good football team, and certainly they're a Mountain West. They're a group of 5, and Colorado should win this game just as a terms of program status. But they were down by 11 points in the fourth quarter. They were down by 8 with the ball sitting at the 2-yard line. And again, they showed the resolve, the poise to pull out the big plays, to make those happen when they needed them. And so for 3 consecutive weeks, they've won 3 very different types of games against different types of teams in different ways. So they've shown a lot of resiliency and a lot of resolve.
They have. And I think that point about Colorado, for all the ways in which we think these next 2 weeks are going to be rough, we do need to step back and realize by pulling out that game in overtime, as ugly as it was, by winning that game, Colorado is situated such that Colorado has ASU and Stanford, by far the 2 worst teams in the Pac-12 this year, on its schedule. Colorado should be able to beat ASU and Stanford without Travis Hunter. Like, the ASU and Stanford are just really, really bad. ASU because of injuries, Stanford because, it's a complete teardown. It's a complete rebuild under Troy Taylor. So if you assume that Colorado beats Stanford and Arizona State, the Buffs now would just need to get one more win in the other games on their schedule to go to a bowl game. And for Deion to do that in year 1 would be spectacular. Also, any team that's projected to be 3-9, 2-10, which was, I think, the general consensus preseason prediction for Colorado. Any year in which any college football team is predicted to go 3-9 and you make a bowl, like, you have overshot expectations by a large margin. So it's a really interesting dynamic here with Colorado. And this is something I talked about with Mark in the offseason, about Deion managing expectations. Like, he wants to pump belief into his kids, and like, we've seen the fruit of that. So, like, the strategy has worked to a considerable degree on a lot of levels. But if Deion is still projecting his team, if he's telling them internally, hey, like, we are, a top tier Pac-12 contender, I don't know if he's doing that, but if he is, like, he's setting his team up for disappointment. Getting to a bowl game would be an amazing, amazing achievement under this set of circumstances, and it would certainly cement that notion that Deion has revolutionized how to approach year 1 program building in the era of the transfer portal. If he gets to a bowl game, like, that's going to solidify and guarantee that other coaches are going to try and really remake their rosters through the portal. And just to kind of tie all these strands together, just to reemphasize, by beating Colorado State, as ugly and sloppy as that game was, Colorado took a significant step toward getting a bowl bid. That is the number 1 story just for Colorado in terms of the evolution of that program. It means that, if you get to a bowl, that means you get those 15 bowl practices in December, and that's how you can engage in a fresh wave of player development heading into the off season. And that's how you can, get your foundation stronger, more enduring for the long run if you're Deion Sanders in Boulder.
Now, of course, Matt is understanding of and also a proponent of my rankings approach. But USC fans, if you were not aware or understanding of, this is going to mess with you in a big way. USC number 12 this week, Colorado number 6.
Hey, Mark, I hope you read my Pac-12 rankings at Trojans Wire. I put them out every Sunday. I have Colorado number 1, and it's not because I believe Colorado is the best team. It's not because Colorado looks the best on the eye test. It's not because Colorado would be favored in Las Vegas. But you just look at each resume, each collection of 3 results. Colorado does have the best collection of 3 results. Oregon's played an FCS team. USC's played Stanford and Nevada. So I've had USC 5th each of the last few weeks. That doesn't mean I think USC's the 5th best team in the Pac-12. But like if you were ranking these teams 1 through 12 in a poll, you'd have to rank Colorado ahead of USC right now. But again, that doesn't have anything to do with who would win if they played. Doesn't have anything to do with how they're going to end up at the end of the season. Like USC is probably going to be 11-1, or at least that's my prediction. I think Colorado is probably headed for 6-6 at this point. But just in terms of rankings, week to week, where you just reset everything, you start fresh from ground zero every week, and you look at what teams have done. Yeah, if you're ranking teams right now, and this is not clickbait, this is about ranking teams properly. It's Mark Rogers' concept of top 25 rankings that make sense. And using the right philosophy for ranking teams. So this is like just educating college football fans on how to rank teams. It's not being troll-tastic. It's not being clickbaity. This is just how to do the art of rankings properly. Colorado would be ranked ahead of USC right now, and that shouldn't even be a controversial take because Stanford's really bad, just ate a loss to Sacramento State. Nevada lost to Idaho at home by 27. You can't put USC's resume now ahead of everyone else. But of course, USC is going to be playing Notre Dame, Utah, Oregon, Washington. Everything works out in the end if your team's good enough. So that's what gets people all twisted into a pretzel in terms of rankings. But Mark is trying to educate the public, and I fully adopt and support and agree with his rankings philosophy.
I'm going to be the contrarian and say it this way. You know how, and I agree that polls shouldn't come out. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's fun. It honors the games that are played. But realistically, I like the fact that for the playoff polls, they don't come out until what was it, week 5, 6, whatever it is, that when the first poll comes out.
I think there shouldn't be polls until election day, basically. November.
So that's what I'm saying. So when I hear Colorado number 1, all this other stuff, okay, look. So yes, they've played a couple teams, but we have no idea what TCU is. I get it. I understand it. I think both you guys' metrics are valid, but the output to me is just as absurd as the ones where they rank because Georgia was best last year, so we'll start them and someone beats them, they'll be number 1, right? I get that. I think for me to be happy, it's somewhere between. I can't look at Georgia and say that they're not a top 20, but I get it. They didn't play anybody, so they're not in the top 20, etc. I get that part of it. I get that some of these teams have played tough teams, but realistically, they're playing slightly marginal Power 5 teams and winning. I get that too, and I could look at teams like Michigan and go and say, "There's no way they're better than Michigan." You know what I mean? So it's things like that it goes back and forth. That's what freaks people out. But truly, the way you guys lay it out, and you say, "Hey, look, this is just basically who they played and the results on the field," it does make sense. But the people like me, with the back of my mind said, yeah, but that team sucks. They can't be the top 10. They may have got a couple of good wins. There's no way hell they finish in the top 25. That's where the brain gets twisted because you see the team on the field, they get a win, but you go, there's no way in hell that's a top 10 team.
Yeah. I've seen someone in the comments say, Matt, where do you have Alabama ranked? Not in the top 25. Alabama does not have a top 25 body of work right now. So if we're doing rankings properly, Alabama's just nowhere close to anything at all.
And remember, these are not power rankings. They're not saying that the teams
they're
saying
rankings
based solely on the resume and who they played.
Yes.
Resume, results. What have you done? That's it. That's it.
Meanwhile, yes, while I have Alabama out of my rankings, I've got Rutgers at 22. I've got Syracuse at 24.
Yeah, Rutgers is a top 4 team in the Big Ten right now because of its resume. Rutgers has not played an FCS team, so its resume is ahead of Ohio State. Like Ohio State played Indiana, Western Kentucky, and an FCS. Rutgers has a better resume than Ohio State does right now. Now, does it make a hill of beans difference as to whether Rutgers has a better resume than Ohio State right now? No. But if you're going to just become a student in the art of ranking teams properly, that is how the process is supposed to go week to week here at the Voice of College Football.
But how do you guys work out? How do you guys hash out when you completely eviscerate a bad team? So for instance, you have a bad team beat a bad Power 5 team, right? How do you decide if that win is better than, let's say, USC absolutely crushing teams, or or Oregon crushing a team? How do you guys hash that out?
I'm going to throw out any FCS game unless it's like North Dakota State, unless it's like a top 5 FCS team, something like that. But just in a generic FCS team, I'm not going to assign any weight to that. But I will assign weight to eviscerating a bad FBS team. So, like, that's why Washington should be highly ranked in any Pac-12 discussion. I mean, even though Michigan State might be really bad, going to East Lansing and just immediately getting a 40-point lead, like, that's more impressive than scoring 81 against Portland State. Hint, hint, quack, quack.
Yeah, but we're also talking a very bad rudderless MSU team who doesn't even have a coach
rudderless.
There. So, I mean,
still, you're going to East Lansing, and I do think that Michigan State is better than Stanford. If you
slightly, yeah.
Those two teams. So
I think St. John Bosco is better than Stanford. So yeah,
strictly in terms of right now. And again, USC fans want to send me hate mail, fine. But Washington should be ranked ahead of USC right now if you're ranking teams properly.
Now, I am including a component that maybe Matt is not, or you'll have to correct me, Matt. Maybe you aren't including this quite to the degree that I am. Performance. So Team A beats Team B 50-0. I give that much more weight than if Team A beat Team B 28-27 on a last-second field goal. So I'm also grading the teams based on performance and not just a win's a win. No, I'm evaluating the performance and the dominance or game control factor of the win.
I do that to a degree, but I generally throw that out for FCS.
And that's why I've got USC at 12.
FCS, I disregard it. But, generally, I will throw out FCS. But if like a team that has one FCS win, but which, kicked an FBS Power 5 team's butt by like 40, that will counterbalance it a little bit. So yeah, I have to get out my full owner's manual for this, but generally, like if you do play an FCS team, you need something to counterbalance that when comparing resumes. But of course, early in the season, it's all very fluid, and that's the main thing: is that you just do a full scrub, and a full reset every week. That should be your mindset. That you're not ranking teams after week 3, thinking about how you're going to rank teams after week 4, 5, 6, what your projections are going to be at the end of the season. You're just looking at everything fresh. And of course, in week 4, we have all these major showdowns: Ohio State, Notre Dame, Florida State, Clemson, and on and on and on. 3 games in the Pac-12 between ranked teams. 2 teams, both in the top 25. We have 3 of those games in the Pac-12 in week 4. Oregon State, Washington State, ranked team versus ranked team. UCLA, Utah, ranked team versus ranked team. Colorado, Oregon, ranked team versus ranked team. So the resume quality is going to go way up this weekend, and it's going to just create a total reset, and the rankings are definitely going to look very different. But that is the point of Mark Rogers' top 25 rankings that make sense here at the Voice of College Football. You're doing the reset every week. You're not relying on what happened last year, last month, last week. Every week you start fresh. Got to get
and that's another thing that plays with people's minds and their concept of rankings is they anticipate very little movement, where in fact, if you only have 3 data points and then you're working on a 4th data point, the winner of the Ohio State Notre Dame game, the winner of the Clemson Florida State game, their resumes will skyrocket compared to their competition. You don't get your spot and then you're immovable as long as you win. That's why people question me all the time. Number 17 was behind number 16. Why did you move them up? They both won. Well, they played it better. And then you have to even evaluate the previous wins and losses, because those teams get better and worse as the season goes on. So it's a constant fluid situation.
All the moving parts. Yep.
Well, now how the moving parts, not talking about that. So what about, so we saw that Colorado dropped in the AP poll because they won, but should a ranked team really be struggling, and quite frankly should have lost against that Colorado State team, and the same thing as well as for Florida State? Do they have any business? If we're doing week to week, like you're saying, and it's about performance, right? Because the AP is slow to move. You guys are very quick to the way you do it, or the way I hear it or understand it. It moves very quickly. It's very volatile. And I would assume then that if you have a team that lays an egg against a really crap team, because I'm not disparaging, they've got some pieces of Colorado State, and then like you said, Matt, they do really, but it is the Mountain West. To have them so highly ranked when they struggled against a poor team, and we said we don't know who this TCU team is at all, and Nebraska's bad. So when you add that all up, it's like, are they that good? They have 3 wins, but they look
I'll
bad.
Answer it this way: these moves are not made in a vacuum. It's not like I say, well, they were number 5 and they struggled against a bad team, so I'm going to drop them to 8. No, it's completely torn down to ground zero, and then you build it back up. So I'm not, and I believe Matt's on board as well. I'm not looking at, okay, how far should they move? Well, it all depends, because it's not in a vacuum. Colorado could struggle they were number 3 for me last week. They dropped to number 6. Now, they didn't drop to number 6 because I thought, they should drop to about number 6 because they barely get. No, it had nothing to. They could have dropped to 18. They could have stayed where they were. It depends on everybody else as well as their performance.
Yeah, and really, for the first 2 months of every college football season, this is why I think we shouldn't have polls until November, because for the first 2 months, you're wondering how good everybody is. There's a lot of mediocrity.
You have to make some assumptions
right now. Yeah, we don't know how good Texas is. Like that Texas-Alabama game, in terms of the meaning people assign to it, like that game feels a million degrees different 1 week later, right? In terms of the value and the impressiveness attached to Texas's achievement. Now, it's an achievement, but how big an achievement looks a lot different 1 week later, right? So, yeah, the first 2 months of every season, you should not be asking how much should this team move up or down in the rankings. Just eliminate that. The how much should each team move question, that should only be relevant in the final few weeks of the season, when you are getting down to brass tacks and you're trying to separate that number 4 team from that number 5 team for the final spot in the college football playoff, or 3 versus 6 as well. That's when you should get into it. But the thing is, you can then ask that question, how much should each team move? That question becomes relevant and worth discussing, because you have about 10 data points by that point in time. Right now, you have 3 data points, and pretty much at this point, almost all data points are cupcake quality data points. In week 4, we're finally going to get these heavyweight showdowns, and we're going to begin to accumulate substantial reference points for these various teams. But just as a general rule, folks watching here at the Voice of College Football, in the first 2 months of a season, if you are interested in rankings, you should not be asking, how much should this team move? Just eliminate that question from your thought process until mid-November. Then we can get down to that question. That's how you should handle it every year here at the Voice of College Football.
But we have them because they're fun to talk about, and they're all flawed in my book.
Oh, absolutely.
Knock you guys out.
That's another statement I make all the time, Tim, is when people may get the idea that I think these are unquestioned and then they should not even be challenged. No, I say they're flawed. They're flawed. They're not perfect, but they make sense. They're logical. But I'm not saying, oh, so and so's number 8, and there's no way they could possibly be number 6 or be number 10. Or no, they're not flawless. They're not that they just cannot be challenged in any way. That there's no way to challenge that the Central Michigan win could be slightly better than the somebody else's Eastern Michigan win. And yes, it's nuanced.
It's college football. And that's why when you look at it, no one should throw out the recruiting rankings, but anyone think of that as a science. If their team beat another team in the rankings by 0.3, that they had a better recruiting class.
Yes,
then
exactly.
Hey, we beat you last year by 0.3. It's like real. I mean, seriously, it's just there's a little leap of faith.